Part 74. Hong Kong movies, I can see the loyalty value, I am not panicked at all. Author, Ban Wanqing Buletin Liang. Chapter 731. The direction of international public opinion began to shift. Without a clear statement from the beautiful country, Western countries began to tentatively condemn Sakhalin. John Bull, nearly 50,000 more lives, I recommend launching an investigation into Sakhalin. Hans the cat, I don't think we were so cruel back then, expelling people into the cold sea. Gallic chicken, yes, the old cat is right. This is true. Apart from slaughtering the Hebrews, it is not so cruel. Udalang. When I heard this, I realized that although I did not clearly have the support of my father in the beautiful country, it would be great to have the support of these allies. He immediately became elated and wanted to continue his efforts to smash the tyranny of Sakhalin into reality. At this time, Huaguo was also anxiously contacting Li Qing. The overwhelming international public opinion made Huaguo unable to help but feel worried for Li Qing. Brother Li, what on earth is going on? Qi Gang's tone was very anxious. In his opinion, this matter was extremely detrimental to Li Qing and might even threaten Li Qing's life. If the United Nations forces insist on taking action, of course, this cannot avoid China and the beautiful country. Brother Qi, don't worry about this matter, I have my own opinion, Li Qing comforted with a smile. Qi Gang was still uneasy. In fact, he wanted to kill those immigrants who were young, but the consequences of what Li Qing did were too great. Originally, the New World was a world-class gangster organization with a not very good reputation. Now, suddenly, there is so much negative public opinion, which is even more detrimental to Li Qing. But Li Qing had already said this, so he could only relax temporarily. Okay, the minister has spoken. If you need any help, just ask. The two chatted for a few more words before hanging up the phone. After putting down the phone, Li Qing thought for a long time. He thought that the bullets would still fly for a while and people's emotions had not yet reached their peak. However, you can temporarily release some news to relieve the pressure. Dongxiu, come. Zhang Dongxiu heard his eldest brothers shout and immediately stepped forward. Spread the news that we have a special medicine on Sakhalin Island, and then spread the news that this virus was caused by the leak of the World War II virus base. Didn't you promote the research of special medicines when you were a child? Then I will directly take out the special medicine, and also expose the virus experimental base on Sakhalin Island during World War II. Now Sakhalin is not afraid to come up with special medicines, because most of the immigrants from the island have already left as soon as they heard that Zaire had developed special medicines. The tens of thousands of people left on the island are almost in the self-healing stage. However, Li Qing didn't want to distribute special medicine to them, so that they could better distinguish the little Japanese. After all, the pock marks on their faces couldn't be covered up with ordinary makeup. Zhang Dongxiu's eyes lit up when he heard his eldest brother's instructions, and he immediately responded, "Okay, brother." As soon as the news came out that there was a special medicine in Sakhalin Island, other countries in the world were also a little puzzled. In the early days, it was a country that could develop a specific medicine in a short period of time with all the efforts of the whole country. It was already amazing. How could the New World develop special medicines in such a short time? Could it be that, the New World already has so much energy? Even William, who was far away in the beautiful country, wondered if the New World could really develop a special medicine in such a short time. The scientific research strength behind that is extraordinary. He even called Li Qing to give him some insinuations. Li Qing certainly knew what he was worried about and told him the truth directly, which made the beautiful country put down their worries. However, the beautiful country does not intend to interfere in this matter. After all, it is time to fight in the small days. They are still angry about the last three-phase bomb incident. Ma Tian, Do you think Sakhalin has really developed a special medicine? Yasuda held his chin, expressing doubts about this matter. Xyli gathered the top virus experts in the country, several of whom were assassinated by the New World, but none of them developed a specific drug. He did not believe that Sakhalin could develop a specific drug. It has only been more than 2 weeks since the virus broke out. If the New World has scientific research capabilities, it has long been feared by major countries. Prime Minister Yasuda, seeing is believing. Let's buy it and give it a try. Asada suggested. He didn't believe it either, so he wanted to get some to try, especially since he hadn't had it yet, in case it was true. He would not have to become pockmarked like Prime Minister Yasuda and those cabinet members. I personally test the drug, and if it's not true, we're just there to debunk it internationally. Asada straightened his chest and raised his head with a righteous look on his face. Yasuda glanced at Asada with a relieved expression, but when he saw Asada's intact face through the protective mask, the corner of his mouth couldn't help but twitch. Almost the entire cabinet was annihilated, except for this Asada. Yasuda now hopes that the special medicine in Sakhalin is fake. After Asada obtained the specific medicine through some channels, he started taking it. To his surprise, the special medicine circulated in Sakhalin turned out to be real. Even if he had close contact with an infected person, he was not infected, which means that the special medicine has completely blocked the replication and reproduction of the virus. He told Prime Minister Yasuda the great news. But Yasuda was not as happy as he imagined. Seeing Yasuda's serious face, Asada Kamichi couldn't help but said, "Prime Minister Yasuda, isn't this a good thing? With special drugs to block it, the virus cannot spread at all." Yasuda raised his eyelids and glared at him. Seeing the intact skin on Asada's face, he became even angrier. "Idiot, doesn't that mean our special medicine is fake? Isn't our deception of the public exposed? And, how many people in Zaire are still uninfected?" Yasuda's words made Asada Kamiyaki's face flash with embarrassment. When Zaire's special medicine came out, almost everyone stopped taking precautions. If there are still people who haven't been infected, I'm afraid, there are only Asada Kamichi and a few virus experts and doctors who know the inside story. Then, Prime Minister, what should we do? This matter is very tricky. If the public knows that their special medicine is fake, I'm afraid it will cause public outrage. Yasuda narrowed his eyes. Asada, why do you think Sakhalin Island can develop a special medicine so quickly? Unless. Asada's eyes lit up, unless the virus was developed by them, they had the special medicine in their hands from the beginning. Asada Kamichi blurted out, and Yasuda, who was interrupted, suppressed his dissatisfaction. I think it's very likely. Whether this is true or not, if Li Qing can't prove himself, everyone will doubt it. We just gave them a direction to doubt. Ma Tian gave a thumbs up. Prime Minister, you are indeed wise and resourceful. Yasuda smiled faintly. Okay, go down and arrange it. This matter needs to be done quickly. Maybe Li Qing will do something weird again. Okay, Prime Minister Yasuda. The contradiction between Zairizi and New World has now become public. If it weren't for the virus, Yasuda would have ordered the cleanup of New World's industry in Zairizi. Hong Kong movies, I can see the loyalty value, I am not panicked at all. Author, Banwanqing Buletin Liang. Chapter 732. When Xiaorizai spread rumors and Li Qing heard them, he laughed. The whole incident has been extended according to his thinking, although there are some deviations in the middle, such as Xiaorizai's special medicine operation. Now as expected, the source of the virus is pointed to the New World and Li Qing. Li Qing is not accommodating, and directly asked Zhang Dongzhou to throw all the information about Xiaorizai's Sakhalin virus base during World War II to the United Nations. And to tell the truth, the special medicine is also left by them. Because the ingredients in it are unknown, Sakhalin took a long time to develop it. This incident shocked the entire international community. The Sakhalin virus incident has really made the whole world eat melons during this period. Xiao Rizai and New World have been reversing back and forth, which has made everyone dumbfounded. What did I see? It turns out that Xiaozi suffered all of his own fault. Hee, you reap what you sow. Tisk tisk, Xiaozi is the most hypocritical nation in the world. Damn, I was complaining about Xiaozi a few days ago, but it turns out that Sakhalin is the victim. The majority of public opinion came to Li Qing, but there were also some people who were paid to do things and were more honest. In any case, it is a fact that Sakhalin drove Xiaozi immigrants away. Yes, this inhumane behavior does need to be condemned. Knowing that the virus leaked, why did they send those immigrants back to Xiaozi? I heard that many died because of the cold weather. Most of the immigrants did not die from the virus, but were frozen to death because of Sakhalin's expulsion. There are many such remarks, which can be heard by Li Qing and others, but he doesn't care, because he still has a big killer that has not been released. Let these people stir up the topic a little more, and then Xiaozi will be embarrassed. The international community is arguing over the Sakhalin virus incident, but Li Qing is living his own life behind closed doors. During this period of free time, he specially accompanied Mao Xianmin. Although the weather was cold, it could not stop his enthusiasm to take Mao Xianmin to inspect various places. After all, this is an island larger than Taiwan, and now it belongs to him. How can he not be excited? Well, is the basic condition a little poor? Li Qing sat in a luxurious restaurant and shook his head at the infrastructure outside. It is obvious that Mao is not very concerned about the entire Sakhalin Island, and the municipal infrastructure is not very good. Many places are not even as good as the autonomous province of Java, which makes him a little disappointed. Fortunately, I will call the company's planners to come and let them take a look. Mao Xianmin smiled at her man. Planners from the Korean country? Haha, I might as well go directly to Han's country. Li Qing knew that Han's country was still okay in terms of professionalism. The infrastructure of Huangdao in his hometown was built by Han's country, and it has been more than 100 years now, and there is nothing wrong. Mao Xianmin glared at the man with a reproachful look. She also knew that her man had never had a good impression of the Korean country. Li Qing saw Mao Xianmin's expression, chuckled, and pushed the caviar that the waiter had just brought to Mao Xianmin. Eat more, I'll take you skiing later. Mao Xianmin nodded happily. This period of time was her happiest time, occupying all of Li Qing's time. Ugh! A retching sound made Li Qing raise his head. Mao Xianmin was seen holding the table with one hand and patting her chest with the other hand, and her mouth was constantly retching. What's wrong, what's going on? Li Qing quickly stood up and patted the woman's back. Mao Xianmin raised her head after a while. I don't know, I just smelled the smell of caviar, I couldn't help it. Mao Xianmin herself was also puzzled. As a chaebol, caviar was not a rare thing for her, so why did she feel nauseous this time? Instead, Li Qing circled around Mao Xianmin. Xianmin, did you have your period this month? This sentence made Mao Xianmin stunned. She had been spending the night with her man for a long time, and she had never paid attention to her period at all. Brother Qing, what do you mean? The huge joy made Mao Xianmin tremble, and she looked at Li Qing expectantly. Let's go to the hospital for a checkup. If we check at this time, we must draw blood to confirm it, after all, it is in the early stage. An hour later, Li Qing hugged Mao Xianmin, who looked incredulous, and walked out of the hospital, followed by Zhang Dongxiu and Crow, who looked happy. Haha, we have another little nephew. Zhang Dongxiu patted Crow's shoulder hard. Hiss, be gentle. Maybe it's a little niece. Crow laughed. Zhang Dongxiu didn't say anything, but glared at him fiercely. Now the eldest brother Li Qing has few children, only the eldest son and daughter. The brothers under him all hope that the eldest brother will have many children and good fortune. Brother Qing, am I really pregnant? Mao Xianmin was still confused. She had been crazy with her man before, but this time she was really lucky. She felt that her decision to come to Sakhalin Island was extremely correct. Li Qing also smiled from ear to ear. This time, she had a third child, whether it was a boy or a girl, it would be a branch for the Li family. Really? How could the test report be wrong? The gynecologist in the autonomous province would not lie to me. Li Qing said with certainty while hugging Mao Xianmin. He. Mao Xianmin followed the man step by step into the car, obviously overjoyed. Mao Xianmin having a child is a happy thing for everyone, but Li Qing will suffer again. After all, she can't beat the child in the early pregnancy. In order to let Mao Xianmin rest assured to take care of the baby, Li Qing specially used his connections to invite a professional team from his hometown to take care of her. Now Li Qing is not only accompanying Mao Xianmin, but also thinking about one thing. That is the possibility of establishing a country on Sakhalin Island. When he traded with Putin, Putin said that Sakhalin Island only belonged to him personally and could not be transferred to other countries. But he did not say clearly whether it could become an independent country. With the current strength of the New World, it is not impossible to establish a country on Sakhalin Island. Now, according to analysis, if Sakhalin Island is independent, the first one to stand up and jump up must be Zaire. Li Qing is not sure about Putin's attitude now. His hometown must be fully supportive, and as for the Korean country, well, its opinion doesn't matter. The United States can try it. Now Zaire and the Korean country are used to clamp down on China and Mao. If Li Qing wants to realize the founding of a country, the first thing he has to do is to get rid of his daily life. Show the value of Sakhalin Island, so that the United States can sincerely support him. Of course, it is impossible to use Sakhalin Island to clamp down on China, but it can limit the development of Russia to the greatest extent. Li Qing just wants to achieve his goal through various complex relationships. There is a long way to go. Li Qing took a deep breath. He must be extremely cautious in the game between the three major countries. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Hong Kong movies, I can see the loyalty value, I am not panicked at all. Author, Ban Wanqing Buletin Liang. Chapter 733. Xiaozizi country really has some tricks. Maybe it was influenced by the previous infiltration personnel. The wind direction, which was originally evenly matched, began to drift towards Xiaozizi. The condemnation of Sakhalin Island is increasing day by day, especially in terms of human rights. There are even busy people who listed 10 evidences of Sakhalin Island. Li Qing laughed directly. He couldn't bear it anymore, and directly asked Zhang Dongzhou to release the video of Xiaozizi's self-defense force slaughtering its own people last time. As soon as the video came out, the entire international community was in an uproar again. Killing its own people and pretending to be a victim, this behavior is unbearable even for countries with good relations with Xiaozizi. One by one, they began to keep silent, and some even sincerely apologized to Sakhalin Island. Those so-called human rights protectors in the West jumped out and accused Xiaozizi again, just like they accused Sakhalin Island in the past. Xiaozizi was shot in the foot this time, and its reputation in the whole world is very bad. Especially some internationally famous politicians, they felt deceived, so they began to intensify their export of Zairizi. In addition, most Zairizi people now have pockmarked faces, and Zairizi is also nicknamed pockmarked internationally. Hokkaido, Sapporo, Prime Minister's office. Yasuda sat in the boss chair, lowering his head helplessly. He now has the idea of resigning. Since the friction with the New World, he has not had a smooth life. Every time he was made dirty by Li Cheng, he felt deeply frustrated. Who would have thought that Sakhalin Island secretly recorded the video of the self-defense force killing immigrants? In today's society, let alone the massacre of ordinary people, even the collective massacre of dolphins by Zirizi fishermen will be scolded by Western animal protectors. Prime Minister Yasuda, you and the cabinet still need to make a decision on this matter. Yasuda stood at the bottom with a sad face. The exposure of this massacre incident also put a lot of pressure on him. Some political opponents in the country have begun to oppose him and want to take this opportunity to bring him down. Yasuda frowned and glanced at Asada Kamiyaki's smooth face impatiently. Is this how you do things? Sakhalin actually got the evidence. Xiao Rizi is in a passive position internationally, you have to take the main responsibility for this matter. Yasuda said unhappily. In his opinion, this plan was not wrong. The mistake was that Asada acted carelessly and let Sakhalin get a handle. Asada was silent after hearing this. Although this matter was ordered by Prime Minister Yasuda, now is not the time to argue with the leader about who is responsible. Alas, this matter must not be admitted, and continue to argue with Sakhalin. Just say that Sakhalin forged it, the purpose is to discredit Xiao Rizi. Yasuda sighed, there is no good way now, he can only try to muddy the water. Asada pursed his lips and said nothing after hearing this. He knew clearly that this was only temporary. Now there are many ways to distinguish the authenticity of the video. Sakhalin, especially Li Cheng, is not a fool, he will not give them a chance to defend themselves, there must be a trick waiting for them. Seeing that Asada didn't reply for a long time, Prime Minister Yasuda was a little dissatisfied. Do this according to my method first, and I will discuss the future with the cabinet members. Asada pursed his lips, bowed 90 degrees, and walked out. In fact, he was not stupid. He could feel the change in Yasuda's attitude towards him during this period. What was puzzling was that he couldn't find the reason for the change in Prime Minister Yasuda's attitude. After Asada Kamichi walked out of the office, Yasuda sighed and took out a mirror from the drawer. Looking at the pockmarks on his face that could not be covered by makeup, he felt depressed. Especially when he saw Asada's smooth face, he felt indescribable depression. Now Asada Kamichi is probably the only one in the entire cabinet who can be considered handsome. Although Asada was born in a military family and his skin is rough, it is at least better than the pockmarked face. Knock, knock, knock. A knock on the door woke Yasuda up. He quickly put the mirror in the drawer and coughed lightly. Come in. Prime Minister, the cabinet members are all here, the chief guard said carefully. Yasuda nodded. He proposed to hold the cabinet meeting temporarily, but he didn't let Kamichi Mata attend. He also knew that his method could only delay time, and the truth could not be changed. So someone must take the responsibility for the crime of massacring immigrants. Yasuda strode into the huge study. Prime Minister. Your Excellency. Prime Minister. The cabinet members stood up and greeted Yasuda. Yasuda walked to the first one and knelt down. This was not a formal meeting, so it was not arranged in the conference room, but in a more secluded study. Sit, sit. Are you all healed? Yasuda looked around, and all the cabinet members had pockmarked faces. Thank you for your concern, Prime Minister. I'm fully recovered. Are you fully recovered too? It's fine. Don't worry. All the members of parliament answered with a smile. Yasuda also nodded with a smile, but his expression immediately became serious. Gentlemen, I want to apologize to you. I have an unshirkable responsibility for the disclosure of the massacre. Yasuda immediately stood up and bowed deeply at a 90-degree angle. The other cabinet members were stunned for a moment, and then they all stood up and bowed at a 90-degree angle. Prime Minister, This is a decision we made together. We are all responsible. Yes, it was a unified decision made by our cabinet. It's not your responsibility alone. Hearing the cabinet members defending him, Yasuda stood up and waved his hands, but, if there is a mistake in this matter, I have to take responsibility. Those who can become cabinet members are naturally smart people. They all realized that the defense minister Keiichi Asada was missing from this informal meeting. You know, the defense minister is an indispensable member of the cabinet. The chief cabinet secretary Hikawa, who is directly under Yasuda, turned his eyes and immediately understood what his boss meant. Prime Minister, it is not your responsibility that this matter was exposed by Sakhalin. I think the Ministry of Defense should bear the main responsibility. When Hikawa mentioned the Ministry of Defense, others naturally realized that the Prime Minister was very likely to point the finger at Defense Minister Keiichi Asada. Yes, the Ministry of Defense should bear the main responsibility. The massacre was filmed by the Sakhalin side. It is unforgivable to make such a low-level mistake. We must hold people accountable for this matter. Not only the self-defense forces, but also the Ministry of Defense. This matter must be investigated. I suspect there is a traitor inside, an insider. The cabinet members have figured out that Yasuda just wants to push Asada Keiichi out to take the blame and make him a scapegoat. They agree with this decision wholeheartedly. After all, Asada wanders around the cabinet with a pockmarked face all day long, which really makes him a bit of a chicken standing out among a group of cranes and attracts hatred. Hong Kong movies, I can see the loyalty value, I am not panicked at all. Author, Banwanqing Bulletin Liang. Chapter 734. Although Ma Tian is mainly responsible for this matter, I am still a little uneasy. After all, it is for our little life. Yasuda shook his head pretending to be regretful. It was his plan to push Asada Keiichi out as a scapegoat early on. After all, Asada knew that he had too many things going on. Especially the fake special medicine incident. If cabinet members find out about it, he, the Prime Minister, will definitely be impeached. Furthermore, Asada Keiichi is the best scapegoat now. After all, the order for the self-defense forces to massacre immigrants was given by the Ministry of National Defense. He couldn't shirk it even if he wanted to. Prime Minister, you are too kind. In this matter, I propose that our cabinet jointly impeach Defense Minister Keiichi Asada. After all, this matter has caused a big stir internationally, and someone needs to take responsibility. Rikawa and Yasuda looked at each other and stood up first to support. I agree to. Agree. Support the Prime Minister's decision. Each cabinet member said that Keiichi Asada was primarily responsible for this incident. Alas. Yasuda shook his head regretfully, I really can't bear it, let's leave this matter to Rikawa. Yes, Your Excellency, Prime Minister. Rishuan immediately lowered his head and bowed. Several more unimportant resolutions were passed one after another, and this informal cabinet meeting ended. Yasuda deliberately left Hikawa behind and called him into the office. Hikawa, you must be careful when impeaching and arresting Asada Keiichi. He has many senior and mid-level self-defense force officials under his command. Yasuda reminded specifically. Yasuda knew that Asada Keiichi had been trying to win over his subordinates over the years, otherwise the massacre order would not have been carried out so smoothly. Well, don't worry, Prime Minister. I will contact the Ministry of Justice on this matter, and the National Police Agency will cooperate with us. Rikawa said softly. Well, okay, I can rest assured that you will do your job. It is not impossible for you to take down Asada, the position of Defense Minister. Yasuda drew the pie with a smile. His words made Rishuan extremely excited. The power of the Defense Minister was frightening. If it can really be achieved, it can really be said that one person is inferior to 10,000 people. Okay, I'll leave this matter to you, Mr. Hinakawa. I'm very optimistic about you, don't let me down. Yasuda patted Hikawa on the shoulder. Rishuan quickly bowed to express his gratitude, saying that he would do this matter beautifully. Until he walked out of Yasuda's office, Hikawa's face was still filled with a smile. Until he walked out of the government and got into his car, the smile on his face immediately faded. Sitting in the driver's seat, Hikawa rubbed his stiff face and smiled mysteriously. Interesting, the two actually had a falling out. Hikawa casually glanced at the cell phone left on the passenger seat. This incident might be good news for the headquarters. After learning about Xyle's infiltration plan, Li Qing also used his plan to infiltrate Xyle's government. Hikawa is the highest-ranking official of the New World who has infiltrated the Xyri government. He was basically the one who conveyed the news about the land pioneering groups in the past. On Sakhalin Island, in Li Qing's villa, Li Qingzhen was doing prenatal education with Mao Xianmin. He always wondered what little Diodiu who was only 2 months old could understand. There is no way, a pregnant woman just has to be coaxed. Until he almost fell asleep listening to prenatal music. Dong dong. A very quiet knock on the door sounded. Brother, there's news, Zhang Dongzio shouted in a low voice at the door while holding his throat. He was directly glared at by Mao Xianmin, who was lying on the sofa. Li Qing also immediately became energetic after hearing this. Ahem, Xianmin, I'll go out and come back to accompany you later. After speaking, Mao Xianmin hurriedly walked out of the bedroom without waiting for anything to say. The impatience could be seen by everyone, which made Mao Xianmin snort dissatisfied. Good Dongzio, I didn't hurt you in vain. Li Qing smiled and patted Zhang Dongzio on the shoulder. Brother, there's really news, Zhang Dongzio said sheepishly. Well, is there really any news? Li Qing was stunned for a moment and took Zhang Dongzio downstairs. A few minutes later, Li Qing looked at the message in his hand and raised his eyebrows. Well, Yasuda actually wants to use Asada as a scapegoat? He. What is the Ministry of Defense? In other countries, it is the Ministry of Defense. Now the head of a country is taking the lead in wanting to get rid of the Minister of Defense. This is interesting. Brother, let them do it. It will be beneficial to us anyway. Crow said, shaking his head. The more chaotic the little life is, the better it is for Sakhalin. If the Xyri government really gets rid of the Ministry of Defense's defense affairs, I'm afraid the political arena in Xyri will also be in turmoil for a while. But Li Qing wanted more than that, he wanted to go deeper. Dongzio, have the US troops stationed in Japan not returned to Kyushu? Li Qing suddenly asked. Because of the Sakhalin virus incident, the US military stationed in Japan went to live a crowded life with the US military stationed in South Korea. Well, there is no news about returning to my childhood. It looks like it will have to wait for a while. Zhang Dongzio thought for a while and replied. The US troops stationed in Japan are also afraid of death. Even if there is a special medicine, they would not dare to return to Kyushu. Moreover, the country of Bangsa seems to be more nourishing than in their childhood. Li Qing's lips curved. That's good, that's good. Zhang Dongzio and Crow looked at each other, neither of them could guess what their elder brother was thinking. Send a letter to Sparrow and ask him to tell Mata Kamichi the news that the Xyri cabinet impeached Mata. Li Qing just wanted to see whether Mata Kamichi wanted to resist or surrender. Anyway, it was good for Sakhalin Island. If Mata really resisted, it would be more interesting. Then he would have a few more chess pieces on the chessboard. Also, let Sparrow test whether Mata has the heart to resist. If so, then help him appropriately. Li Qing stopped Zhang Dongzio, who was about to go out, and said, Okay, big brother. Zhang Dongzio received the order and hurried out to reply. Only Li Qing and Crow were left in the hall. Crow looked at his brother, who was lost in thought. Big brother, what should we do with the Xyri people left on our island? Crow thought of those Zairizhi immigrants. After hearing this, Li Qing thought about it seriously. Let's get them to the north first. These people are still useful. The current situation is not good to expel these people from Sakhalin Island. After all, the eyes of the whole world are on him, and he also needs to take into account a little bit, at least not to do it too obviously. And as he said, this group of people is indeed useful, which is related to his future plans. In fact, no one knows that Li Qing has had a whimsical idea since he knew that Emperor Putin wanted to sell Sakhalin Island to him. From then on, he was playing a big game. Hong Kong movies, I can see the loyalty value, I am not panicked at all. Author, Ban Wanqing Buletin Liang. Chapter 735. This chess game is so big that he may not be able to complete it in his lifetime. But it doesn't matter. As Chinese people, what they lack the most is the spirit of Yugong. After all, if they can achieve it, it can be called unprecedented. However, in order to achieve this goal, the most important thing now is to spend a lot of money. Let Kandon contact his hometown and the United States to prepare to order the most advanced destroyers, battleships, and other supporting radars and weapons. Let the autonomous province train more navies as a backup. Li Qing narrowed his eyes and said. He planned to build the Sakhalin Navy into a first-class navy in East Asia and Southeast Asia as soon as possible, so that he could truly talk with major powers. Only with the strength that threatens them can there be room for compromise between them. This process is very long, but Li Qing is confident that he can wait slowly. On the other side, Rishuan received the order from the headquarters and immediately understood what the headquarters meant. Is this asking me to mess up my whole life? Rishuan touched his shiny forehead and said to himself. After thinking carefully for a moment, he smiled slightly and drove towards Assad Akem's family. As for whether Assad Akemichi could rebel, it was not within his consideration. With a knife on his neck, anyone would struggle. Sita district, a famous wealthy district in Sapporo. Asada was able to live here thanks to his wife's family. After all, the former high officials of Tokyo flocked to Sapporo at one time. It was really difficult to live in Sita district without some economic strength and power. Asada Akemichi knelt in front of the tea table with a frown on his face. The Prime Minister's attitude towards him became increasingly cold. In addition, the massacre was exposed and the attacks of political opponents made him physically and mentally exhausted. How could Zairi have fallen to such a state? The two mysterious organizations Futabeikai and Yataguchi were destroyed in sequence, the research on three-phase bomb made mistakes, the lurking plans of various countries were discovered, the country exchange plan was discovered, and the land reclamation plan was discovered. Zairi's nearly 50 years of planning were all destroyed. This made him feel an indescribable sense of frustration. Hubby, his wife called him several times before he came back to his senses. What's wrong? There's a cabinet member named Hakawa waiting for you in the reception room. His wife's words made Asada Akame stunned for a moment. Hakawa. He slowly frowned. Although they were both cabinet members, his relationship with Hakawa was not very good, and they even had differences in some decisions. What is he doing here? With doubts in his heart, Asada came to the reception room. Haha, Hakawa-kun, how come you have time to come to me this time? Could it be that the Prime Minister has something to tell me? When Asada saw Hakawa, he stepped forward and shook hands enthusiastically, doing a good job of face. Hello, Asada-kun. It's okay. I just passed by here and came to visit. Hakawa said with a smile. When Asada heard Hakawa's words, he just rolled his eyes in his heart, passing by. No one would believe it. It just so happens that I just got some new tea. Let's try it together. No matter what the reason for Hakawa's visit, Matin still had to act like a host. The two began to chat and taste tea. Until Matin couldn't help it, he asked, Hikawa-kun, you're not just here to visit me, are you? The main reason is that Hikawa is too talkative, and he is also proficient in tea ceremony, and he speaks very clearly. Seeing that Matin couldn't hold his temper, Hikawa chuckled, of course. An informal cabinet meeting just took place today. Hikawa's words made Matin raise his eyebrows. As a member of the cabinet, he was not allowed to attend the meeting. This is a bit abnormal. Oh. Hee, aren't you confused, Matin-kun? Hikawa pointed at Matin and chuckled, and, you are the only cabinet member who didn't attend. When Matin heard this, his heart stomped. He knew what Hikawa meant. This informal cabinet meeting must be related to him. Well, maybe I don't need to attend, Matin said casually. Hikawa glanced at him without saying anything, and stood up to leave. Hikawa-kun, why are you like this? Asada-kun, it's boring if you do this. In this case, just pretend that I haven't been here. Hikawa pretended to be cold, glanced at Asada Kamichi, and pretended to leave. Asada sighed and stood up quickly. Hikawa-kun, wait a minute. I apologize to you, please tell me the truth about what happened yesterday. There was no way, there were many cabinet members present yesterday, but until now only Hikawa came, which means that most of the cabinet members have made some kind of decision. Hikawa sat down. Ahem, alas, Asada-kun, your death is imminent. He didn't play it safe, and spoke directly. When Asada heard what Hikawa said, his eyes widened. How can this be said? The cabinet meeting decided that you are primarily responsible for the massacre, and they will probably use you as a scapegoat. Asada was stunned, and his face flushed with anger. Everything I did was instructed by Yasuda, and I was standing on the side of the Little Days Empire. Mr. Asada, what's the point of you saying this now? To be honest, I can't bear to see a person who really works for the Empire fall into this situation, so I came to tell you. Alas, that's all I have to say, you can do whatever you want. Hikawa stood up, and this time he put on his shoes and walked out of the reception room without paying attention to Mata's request. Mata looked at Hikawa's back, and an inexplicable look appeared on his face. But what he was struggling with now was what to do next. Obviously, he had become a discarded child. As the night slowly fell, Mata came sat motionlessly at the table, and the tea on the table had already cooled down. Ah! With a deep sigh, Mata suddenly opened his eyes. He didn't want to die, especially not to die with this black pot on his shoulders. He didn't know Hikawa's purpose, but it seemed that he had helped him. Mata stood up and picked up the ancestral samurai sword from the knife rack. Swish! Mata pulled out the samurai sword, and the moonlight outside the window reflected on the samurai sword, emitting a chilling cold light. Since you all want my life, then, I'll give it to you. Mata grinned, revealing pale teeth. It's not that he has no power to resist now, because his subordinates control the biggest force of Zairizi now, the self-defense force. Especially in recent years, he has won over many middle and lower level officers, so he is not without the power to fight. Yes, he wants to launch a military coup, and follow the example of Zairizi's predecessors to control Zairizi again under the control of the army. Now there is no way out, and it just so happens that the American garrison is not there, and Yasuda and the cabinet can't make any waves at all. Clang! The samurai sword directly cuts the whole table in half. Military coup. Rebellion. You are listening to novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Hong Kong movies, I can see the loyalty value, I am not panicked at all. Author, Ban Wanqing Buletin Liang. Chapter 736. Kame Asada was very loyal to Prime Minister Yasuda, but in the end Yasuda and the cabinet simultaneously pushed him out as a scapegoat. Now that he had decided on a military coup, he did not hesitate at all and called his direct descendants from the self-defense forces overnight. Nakamura, you lead the troops to control the Sapporo Metropolitan Police Department and the National Police Agency. Sakata, you lead the troops to take control of the capital, and you won't let anyone go. Azawa, the task of protecting Tianhuang depends on you. Don't worry, after this matter is stabilized, I will personally apologize to His Majesty Tianhuang. Under the well. Asada Kamichi is worthy of being the defense minister. He is still very good at military deployment. In addition, he also drew on the experience of previous failed military coups. Make sure this coup is correct. But to be honest, his timing was very good. There were no troops stationed by the United States to cause trouble, and Yasuda and the cabinet did not have military power, so they could not make any waves at all. Gentlemen, this is a time when the empire is in crisis. All of you here are the elites of the empire. In order to restore the glory of the empire, please do your best. Asada Kamichi stood up and bowed 90 degrees to the middle and lower ranking officers. The officers present stood up with a shua, and all of them looked excited. As members of the self-defense forces, they had long wanted to turn the self-defense forces into a real army. Only in this way can they have real room for advancement. Please rest assured, Mr. Asada, we will definitely complete the mission. Asada Kame looked around with a solemn expression. Let's go. Prime Minister Yasuda was sitting naked in the bathtub, constantly thinking about the future development direction of his little life. Due to the nuclear explosion, Honshu Island was sparsely populated, and people with some ability poured into Kyushu and Hokkaido. What made him most regretful was the barren fields of Honshu. In his childhood, food had always been imported, but now the big granary of Honshu was finished. What makes things worse is that in the past, imported grain was mostly imported. Now that the New World occupies Sakhalin Island, it may not be that easy to transport grain through the Soya Strait in the small days. By the way, it seems that New World still has shares in Panasonic and Mitsubishi, Yasuda said to himself. He suddenly remembered that the New World seemed to have a lot of industries in Zayazai. If he could control all these industries, he might not be able to make up for the losses in Zayazai. Humph, I heard that Matsushita Arita even married his daughter to Li Cheng. Haha, let's start with this old guy. Yasuda narrowed his eyes and whispered. But what he didn't know at this time was that Asada had led troops to surround his official residence. Tisk, the sound of brakes sounded. Asada jumped out of the car wearing a military uniform that he never wore on formal occasions. The bodyguard standing at the door saw him and hurriedly walked down the steps to ask. Mr. Asada, it's so late. Before he could finish speaking, the bodyguard had a cold gun barrel pressed against his forehead. Asada patted him on the shoulder. You are all outstanding talents in your childhood. I don't want your precious lives to be wasted here. The bodyguards looked at the gun-wielding self-defense forces soldiers behind Asada Kamichi in shock, and then wisely dropped their guns. This is a military coup and they will literally die if they don't surrender. Asada waved, and the soldiers behind him swarmed up and took the bodyguards into custody. Hey, how could you? Asada pushed the door open directly and didn't care about the butler's obstruction. Where is Yasuda? The housekeeper was immediately shocked by this large number of soldiers and swallowed, in, the bathroom. Superior. A group of soldiers rushed directly into the bathroom of Yasuda's bedroom and took out Yasuda, who was half-clothed and full of panic. When Yasuda saw Asada Kamichi clearly, his expression was shocked. Asada Kamichi, what do you want to do? Yasuda struggled to question. He never expected that the person coming would be Asada Kamichi, who had obviously arranged for Hikawa. It seems that Rikawa failed. Asada looked at Yasuda's little grape and shriveled figure with disdain, put a bathrobe on him. A few minutes later, the two were sitting opposite each other on the sofa. Unlike the solemn look on Yasuda's face, Asada Kamichi looked at him with a smile. Haha, Prime Minister Yasuda, you didn't expect that, did you? The corner of Yasuda's mouth twitched. I really didn't expect you, Asada Kamichi, to be so bold. Coup, military coup. I'm afraid it hasn't appeared in decades. The main reason is that the US military has always been stationed there, and some people can't do a military coup even if they want to. He didn't expect that Asada Kamichi would actually carry out a military coup, and now it seems that it was successful. Because he hasn't received any news until now, it seems that Asada is more cautious than he thought. It is estimated that all cabinet members will be taken down tonight. But Yasuda wasn't very scared now. He crossed his legs and looked at Asada Kamichi playfully. You want to create a military government? In fact, Yasuda knew clearly that he had already guessed that Asada's preparation for the military coup was too short, and it was impossible to do it safely in some aspects. Prime Minister Yasuda, you pushed me to be the scapegoat, and the military coup was a helpless move. Of course, some members of the cabinet can still be used. As for your fate, haha. Ma Tian's eyes flashed and he chuckled. You are so sure that you can take over the whole little life. If I am not wrong, you only control Sapporo now, but you have controlled Hokkaido. Yasuda curled his lips. In his eyes, Asada had some abilities, but he was not very strong in the overall situation, and, not enough to convince the public. It is impossible for a defense minister of the Ministry of Defense to completely control the entire small life just by relying on the middle and lower level officers of the self-defense forces. What's more, the senior officers who Asada Kamichi has not won over, as well as the large number of naval self-defense forces in Kyushu, are his hidden dangers. Asada looked at Yasuda with a dull face. Prime Minister Yasuda, I know that your brother is in the Kyushu Naval Self-Defense Force. I hope you will consider the overall situation of the small-time government and admit the correctness of this coup. The condition is that I try to save your life. The reason why he didn't kill Yasuda was because Yasuda's brother controlled the Kyushu Naval Self-Defense Force. Yasuda's face was calm when he heard this, but he sneered in his heart. Someone must take responsibility for the massacre. Now Asada has the initiative. He would definitely blame the whole thing on himself, not to mention his own life, but his political career would definitely be over. And having to bear this kind of infamy in the history of his life is even more uncomfortable than killing him. After all, the Yasuda family is a political family, and the occurrence of such a scandal will have a huge impact on the entire Yasuda family. At this time, Yasuda showed no expression, but he had already made a decision in his heart. In this case, I will consider whether you can allow me to change my clothes. Asada did not refuse this modest request, and waved his hand to let Asada go into the house to change clothes. Hong Kong movies, I can see the loyalty value, I am not panicked at all. Author, Ban Wanqing Buletin Liang. Chapter 737. Yasuda walked into the bedroom under the guard of the soldiers. Well, I'm changing clothes, do you want to watch too? Yasuda glared at the guarding soldiers, and the two soldiers looked at each other and closed the door silently. After all, Yasuda is still the prime minister, and they are a little scared. When the soldiers left the room, Yasuda laughed bitterly. I didn't expect that I would end up like this. I hunted geese all day, and finally got pecked in the eye by the geese. He admitted that he underestimated Ma Tian and treated Ma Tian too roughly. Years of prime minister career made him too conceited, and he didn't consider that Ma Tian would actually launch a military coup. With a bitter smile, Yasuda found a kimono and put it on. Then he took out a ring from the secret compartment at the head of the bed, lifted the ring face, and there was a pill inside. Yasuda slowly lay down on the bed and swallowed the pills in his hand. 10 minutes later, Asada was a little impatient. See if Prime Minister Yasuda has changed his clothes. The soldiers walked into the bedroom, looked at Yasuda lying on the bed with a horrified face, and hurriedly reported to Asada Kamichi. Asada's face was livid, looking at Yasuda, who was already a little stiff on the bed. This time, it's a big trouble. Except that Yasuda made a mistake, this coup can be regarded as a success, at least the people who should be controlled were controlled. It did not cause a big change. But it was not all smooth sailing. Some senior officers in the self-defense forces were extremely dissatisfied with Asada. Asada's approach was equivalent to excluding them all. Originally, the international community was shocked by the military coup in Zaire. Military coups in Siam, Luzon, and even Java were normal, and generally there was one every 10 years. But the military coup in Zaire can be traced back to the 1920s. The most sensational thing was that during this military coup, Zaire Prime Minister Yasuda actually committed suicide. It can be said that most people do not agree with the statement that Yasuda committed suicide. Especially the general of the Kyushu Maritime Self-Defense Force, Shunichi Yasuda, who is the brother of Japanese Prime Minister Yasuda. He doubted his brother's death, and the whole of Kyushu did not agree with the military government established in Hokkaido. This is also what Mata Kamichi is most worried about, internal strife in Zaire. Shunichi Yasuda quickly sent troops to block the road from Honshu to Kyushu, and even the sea area was blocked at the first level. What he has to do now is to defend Kyushu. Brother, internal strife, internal strife. Zaire is in internal strife. Crow came to Li Qing with the latest news with a smile on his face. He never thought that one day, Zaire would fall into civil strife, which is great news for Sakhalin. Keep your voice down, your sister-in-law is asleep in the bedroom. Li Qing laughed and scolded. During this period, Mao Xianmin had severe morning sickness, and it was not easy to fall asleep, and he didn't want to disturb her. Crow shrunk his head and walked to Li Qing. Brother, I just got it, it's still warm. Li Qing took the message and read it carefully. After a while, Li Qing smiled. I didn't expect this Ma Tian to be so unwise and let Yasuda die. Originally, he thought that if he failed to stir up trouble, he would have other plans. Now it seems that not only did he succeed in stirring up trouble, but the effect was beyond imagination. With the temper of the Yasuda family, they would definitely not let Ma Tian Kamichi go. In fact, the political ecology in Zaire has been solidified. Like the United States, each state in the United States is basically controlled by a fixed family. Zaire is no exception. Several political families take turns to be the dealer. Now Ma Tian, a commoner, has emerged as a new force. Nothing can be seen in the short term, but when the situation stabilizes, most of them will pretend to obey but disobey. The most important thing is that Kyushu, controlled by the Yasuda family, has clearly stated that it does not agree with or accept the military government headed by Ma Tian. The temporary division of Zaire has become a fact. However, Li Qing is also worried about one thing, that is, the United States will intervene. Now the United States has not yet expressed its position. Once the United States intervenes, the two parties will inevitably compromise with each other. This is not in the interests of Sakhalin Island. This matter needs to be communicated with William, and it is not easy. Because standing aside and watching is not in line with the United States Asia-Pacific strategy. What is unexpected is that William called him before Li Qing contacted him. Haha, what? Are you addicted to living in Sakhalin Island? Not going back to Gotham? William joked. He knew that Li Qing had been doing a lot of tricks in Sakhalin Island these days, but he didn't care. Anyway, he needed to be disciplined. William, how come you have time to call me? Aren't you busy all day? Li Qing was a little puzzled. Usually William couldn't find anyone, but this time he took the initiative to call him. There must be something strange about it. Li Qing, let's be honest, do you want to establish a country? William's tone became serious. Li Qing frowned when he heard this. He had the idea of establishing a country a long time ago, and he was preparing some things because of this matter recently. I didn't expect William's sense of smell to be so sharp. No, William, who told you that? Li Qing certainly couldn't admit it now. After all, he hadn't started to act. Think tank, they analyzed your recent movements in Sakhalin Island and came to the conclusion after a week of research. And the large number of orders you have placed on the Navy recently cannot help but make people suspicious. William sighed and said in a low voice. He and Li Qing have been friends for so many years, and he didn't want there to be any rift between them. That's why he made this call in advance. Li Qing was silent. They were not fools. In fact, the orders for the Navy had already exceeded the demand for Sakhalin. William, if you have anything to say, just say it directly. Alas, you'd better not have the idea of establishing a country now. It's not just our beautiful country's business, but Russia won't agree. William obviously knew more information than Li Qing, and he told Li Qing what was in his heart. If Sakhalin established a country, it would not be in the interests of all the surrounding countries. He was afraid that Li Qing would be besieged. Li Qing's expression froze for a long time. I know, William, thank you. By the way, Xiaozi's internal strife, I hope you don't interfere. You know Xiao Zizi has calculated Sakhalin a lot. William was obviously relieved when he heard it. He was really a little afraid that Li Qing would go his own way and part ways with him, which would be a major blow to him. As for Li Qing's request, it was not a big deal at all. The United States doesn't want to get involved in the current life. Wouldn't it be better to wait until they beat their brains out and then clean up the mess? No problem, it just so happens that the US troops stationed in Japan are comfortable in the country and don't want to go back. William said happily. Poor country, the country has to tighten its belt again and live a tight life. Hong Kong movies, I can see the loyalty value, I am not panicked at all. Author, Ban Wanqing Buletin Liang. Chapter 738. The cold-eyed observation of the United States made Yasuda Shunichi and other members of the Yasuda family see something. It is obvious that the father of the United States is not optimistic about the military government formed by the Northern Asada Kamichi. Under the instruction of Yasuda Shunichi, the Kyushu Maritime Self-Defense Force began to test the bottom line of the military government. The Kyushu Maritime Self-Defense Force is different from the self-defense forces in other regions. Basically, the entire organization is related to the Yasuda family. This guarantees that the Yasuda family can control the military forces on Kyushu Island for a long time. This is the case with Lieutenant Colonel Osho Koji of the 3rd Battalion of the Kyushu Maritime Self-Defense Force. Osho Hyde is a distant cousin of Prime Minister Yasuda and Yasuda Shunichi. Graduated from the Tokyo Military Academy, he was a lieutenant colonel in the Maritime Self-Defense Force at a young age. Of course, this has a lot to do with his family background. But it cannot be denied that he is also very capable. This time, the death of my brother is definitely not as simple as suicide. In a dark room, Yasuda Shunichi knelt in the main seat, and his whole body was in the shadow, so that people could not see the expression on his face. Not only him, but all the Yasuda family members in the room had frost on their faces. The pillar of the Yasuda family died in a military coup, which was a heavy blow to the entire Yasuda family. After Prime Minister Yasuda died, Shunichi Yasuda automatically became the head of the Yasuda family, and now he is in charge of the entire Yasuda. Head of the family, I also think there is something fishy about the Prime Minister's death. We can't just let this go. The head of our Yasuda family can't die in vain. While the situation in the north is not stable, we must send troops immediately. Blood debt must be paid with blood. Members of the Yasuda family expressed their opinions one after another, and most of them advocated the use of force. The most important thing is that they are more confident in military reunification, and most of the maritime self-defense force is in the hands of the Yasuda family. Although the military government in the north controls part of the army, it is far behind the maritime self-defense force in terms of weapons and equipment. The most important point is that the senior officers of the self-defense forces, who were framed by Keiichi Asada, are also secretly flirting with the Yasuda family. Koji, you lead the 3rd Battalion to test Shikoku. Yasuda Shunichi already had a plan in mind. Shikoku is the closest place to them, and the military government has definitely not yet radiated there. It is the best opportunity to take over Shikoku Island. Cousin, then, Honshu Island, do you want to? Daxion Koji raised his head and asked softly. Honshu Island is now empty of troops, and to be honest, it is also the best time to take over Honshu Island. Yasuda Shunichi shook his head. Most areas of Honshu Island are sparsely populated now, and the northern part of Honshu Island, if I'm not mistaken, Keiichi Asada will heavily guard it. And they will also station most of the army there. Why should we attack others' strengths with our own weaknesses? Yasuda Shunichi has analyzed the situation on both sides very thoroughly. As long as Shikoku Island is taken, the northern military government will have no springboard to threaten Kyushu Island. And Shikoku Island is their buffer zone against the northern military government. As long as Shikoku Island is not lost, they will naturally rest assured. Yes, I will take Shikoku Island as quickly as possible. Osho Koji bowed his head. Yasuda nodded. In addition, the 10th Battalion, the 12th Battalion, and the 32nd Battalion will begin to harass the Hokkaido area to attract the opposite target. The weakness of the northern military government is the navy. Facing the harassment of the maritime self-defense force, it is estimated that it can only sigh in despair and have no way out. Yes. Please rest assured, General. Guarantee to complete the task. The people who received the task expressed their opinions one after another. Yasuda Shunichi waved his hand, and the people in the room walked out one after another. He was the only one who did not move. Alas! A long sigh came. Yasuda Shunichi knew from the beginning that his brother committed suicide. Because he also had the same ring, the two brothers, one political and one military, supported each other, and had already discussed it. Once there is uncontrollable force, suicide is the best. Lead the family to continue dormant until they regain the power of Zairi. But this time he did not listen to his brother. Zairi is not the same as it was before. In recent years, Zairi has been in visible decline, and its economy has fallen out of the top 5 in the world. Especially the abandonment of the United States has made Zairi feel more and more pressure from the outside world, not to mention the giant dragon with blood feud next to it. Even Sakhalin Island controlled by the New World is eyeing it covetously. If he does not take advantage of the absence of the United States to unify Zairi by force, Zairi will slowly decline in the East Asian Circle in the future. Maybe one day, the country of South Korea, which claims to be the second in the world, will jump out to provoke them. So he must do this, even if it causes a temporary split in Zairi. He must completely control the entire Zairi in his own hands. Mata Keiichi, how will you deal with it? Yasuda Shunichi muttered to himself while looking at the sunset outside the window. After receiving the order, Koji Osho did not hesitate at all and directly issued an order to dispatch the 3rd Battalion of the Maritime Self-Defense Force to the 4 islands. The process was just as Yasuda Shunichi expected. The garrisons on the 4 islands were also hesitating about which side to lean towards. After all, the 4 islands are not big, and there are few garrisons on the islands. Even if the armed police are added, they are not enough for the Maritime Self-Defense Force to fight. Therefore, they were also very aware of the current situation. As soon as the Maritime Self-Defense Force arrived, they immediately surrendered and accepted the recruitment. Nothing happened in Shikoku, but the several maritime self-defense forces that went to attract the northern military government went wrong. Asada Kamichi is worthy of being a defense minister who is good at military affairs. He guessed Yasuda Shinika's intention from the beginning. He gave up Shikoku Island early on. After all, Shikoku Island is too close to Kyushu, and the troops in Honshu are empty. There is no ability to fight with Yasuda's people at all. Therefore, all the maritime forces in Hokkaido were concentrated to ambush the maritime self-defense force that came to implement the harassment plan. The destroyers and frigates of the 3 squadrons sent by Yasuda Shunichi were all hit hard. It can be said that Asada Kamichi took the lead from the first round of confrontation. Yasuda Shunichi was not to be outdone. He directly relied on most of the maritime fleet to commit crimes. For several consecutive months, the entire Hokkaido waters obviously became a battlefield. There was constant artillery fire all day long. Actually, it is Yasuda who wins. After all, he is good at the navy, while Asada controls the army. Now Asada's army is stuck in the northern part of Honshu, and there is no chance to go south. Naturally, Yasuda Shinika's maritime self-defense force has the upper hand. When the Zairi started to attack each other, Sakhalin Liqing was watching the fight from the other side. Every day, I received news of the attacks from both sides, and I was always grinning from ear to ear. Of course, it was not just because of this incident, but also because Mao Xianmin's belly was getting bigger and bigger. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Hong Kong movies, I can see the loyalty value, I am not panicked at all. Author, Ban Wanqing Buletin Liang. Chapter 739. Son, another son. Tisk tisk, my old Li family has finally blossomed. Liqing held the report card with a smile, feeling very happy. Ever since he found out he was carrying a son, Mao Xianmin has become a key target of protection, except for necessary activities every day. Liqing sent people to serve him at other times. In order to make Mao Xianmin feel at ease, he also specially invited Mao Xianmin's nanny and housekeeper from Bangsa country. This is not to say that Liqing favors sons over daughters. The main reason is that it is too difficult for him to give birth to children, and he regards each one as a treasure. Mao Xianmin glanced at Liqing angrily. She had only seen another side of her man since she became pregnant. In the past, her man had given her the impression that he was calm, confident about everything, and did not miss anything. Now I do touch her belly and laugh all day long, which makes her a little uncomfortable, but it is more of a surprise. What are you laughing at? Mao Xianmin patted Liqing's mischievous hand on her belly. My son just kicked me. Liqing groped Mao Xianmin's swollen belly up and down, and he could feel the energy of the little guy inside. At first glance, he looks like a brat like Liqingjai. Mao Xianmin's eyes turned cleverly. Brother Qing, what is our son's name? Have you thought about it? Women all have a comparison mentality, and she is no exception. She always secretly compares herself to Da Fang. Liqing chuckled, knowing what his woman was thinking. But he wasn't too perfunctory. What about his name? It has been thought about for a long time, and even the future life path of the second son has been planned. How about Li Changzong? Liqing said with a smile. Li Changzong? Li Changzong. Mao Xianmin muttered softly. Seeing that his woman didn't understand what she meant, Liqing didn't take it lightly and said directly, inherit the legacy of our ancestors. Hearing these words, Mao Xianmin's eyes lit up, and his face instantly showed a look of joy. Based on the meaning of this name, he was not much different from the eldest son of the eldest son. Liqingjai, inherit the family business. Hey, there is no better way to inherit the legacy of our ancestors. Mao Xianmin curled her lips. She even felt that her son's name was even better than that of the eldest son. Mao Xianmin couldn't help but stood up and sat on Liqing's lap, pulled his man's face and kissed him deeply. You have a conscience. Li Qing chuckled and patted her butt. Okay, don't be naughty. You, don't always compare yourself with Hong Kong students. You know, after the second child was born, he and Chenjai were brothers. In the future of life, the two brothers will inevitably support each other. Li Qing shook his head. He clearly understood women's thoughts. But he knew that Mao Xianmin was just playing around with his petty temper. She knew better than anyone about the big issues of right and wrong. I know. Sigh, just these two brothers, what can't we discuss now? Mao Xianmin covered his mouth and chuckled. What she cares about is not the struggle for power, but her position in her man's mind. As long as the man is equal, she can even treat Li Chenjai as her own son. Okay, let's go and rest. I see you're tired too. Li Qing glanced at the crow who was standing at the door and didn't dare to come in, and whispered to Mao Xianmin. Well, indeed, I'll go back to the bedroom first. Mao Xianmin yawned and walked to the elevator with the help of the nanny. When Crow saw his sister-in-law leaving, he walked forward with a smile. Hey, brother. What's wrong? Li Xin had rarely seen Crow so embarrassed. Brother, that Isabella wants to come to Sakhalin Island. Crow scratched his head and said. Li Qing was stunned for a moment. Come on, the entire island belongs to us. What can I ask for? Now the entire Sakhalin Island belongs to the New World, and many families of New World members have immigrated here. Moreover, Li Qing also supported and encouraged this. Immigrants from the autonomous province came every day to fill the lost population of Sakhalin Island. Now the streets of Sakhalin are also lively and not so deserted. The main thing is that Isabella has inherited her grandfather's inheritance now, and she doesn't want to worry about it at all. To be honest, I'm not that material either. Crow said coyly. It's okay to let him pick up girls, but it's better to let him die than let him manage such a large inheritance. What do you want to do? Aren't there professional managers now? Li Qing rolled his eyes. There was nothing he could do about Crow, a weakling. It's troublesome to eat soft food. Are there such people in the world? I can't trust the manager, brother. Why don't we let New World take over? Crow shook his head. Li Qing glared at Wu Wu before he could finish his words. You want to frame me for injustice? If word spread that I tried to seize my brother's property, what will happen to me? I'll find a professional manager for you in the New World, so get out of here. Brother. Roll. Okay. By the way, when Isabella comes, remember to let her come with Mr. Zhang and his family. Hey, okay, I'll notify her immediately. Li Qing watched the crow wander out of the villa, then curled up his lips and smiled. In fact, he knew what Crow was thinking, which was nothing more than the Car King's engine patents and research results. Ever since Crow knew that he had the idea of establishing a country, he has been thinking about bringing these to Sakhalin Island. He also wants to do his part. But it is totally unnecessary now. First, Li Qing will not take his younger brother's things. Second, the plan of establishing a country is temporarily shelved. This matter has to wait for an opportunity. But think about it, now it is just right to use the identity of the organization to mediate in the East Asian monster room. If you rashly establish a country, you may really be attacked by everyone, as William said. However, Li Qing, who temporarily extinguished the heart of establishing a country, is not without work. Looking at the war report on the north and south of Zaire on the table, he kept muttering in his heart, there is a lot of room for development here. When the cannon sounded, gold was worth 1,000 taels. The war between the north and the south of Zaire was in full swing. What is the most lacking in Zaire now? It is undoubtedly arms and food. Especially Sakhalin Island cuts off the food transportation route between Daimo and Hokkaido. Now the northern military government needs to go a long way to import food, and also worry about being robbed by the Kyushu Navy. As for arms, The arsenal in Honshu has been abandoned, and the current ammunition consumption obviously cannot meet the consumption of the northern military government. Even some middlemen began to secretly buy arms from the New World, which shows how much profit there is. Li Qing smiled and curved his mouth. It's time to make some money from the national disaster. Dongziu. Dongziu. Zhang Dongziu heard his elder brother's call and immediately walked in from the outer room, chewing something in his mouth. It seems that he was eating snacks. Brother, you are looking for me. Well, let Ah Sheng produce a batch of guns, as low quality as possible, and bullets, with half the amount of gunpowder, as long as they can be fired. Then import a batch of moldy rice from my hometown, preferably aflatoxin, and use black technology to cover up the smell. Li Qing ordered. Ah! Zhang Dongzia was stunned on the spot. Hong Kong movies, I can see the loyalty value, I am not panicked at all. Author, Ban Wanqing Buletin Liang. Chapter 740. The arms produced by New World have always been high quality and low priced. Big Brother has always paid great attention to quality. Why did he suddenly lower the standard this time? Moreover, a batch of moldy rice was ordered to be imported from my hometown. Now I'm afraid, even the pigs won't eat it, right? John Candon scratched his head in confusion, but he still followed his elder brother's orders unconditionally. After receiving the news, Tian Yangshen, who was far away in Ermao, was puzzled but still made it according to the request of his eldest brother. On the other hand, people back home were a little confused about Li Qing's strange request. The main reason is that the upright Qi Gang disagrees. He thinks that his subordinates must have spread the wrong news. Brother Li has paid so much for the country and the people, how can he give others moldy rice? Even giving old rice is disrespectful to others. No, I made a direct call to Li Qing. Brother Li. Have you been a little tight lately? Qi Gang tried hard to organize his words, hesitating on his face. He himself speculated whether New World's capital turnover was not timely, or why some useless things were imported. Could it be that they were really for feeding pigs? Li Qing had a look of astonishment on his face when he heard Qi Gang's words. To be honest, after rising from the New World, except for the financial defense war, he had never encountered any financial problems. Brother Qi, why do you say this? Ahem, I heard that you wanted to order a batch of rice and named it to be Chen. If there is really a problem with funds, you must tell me. I don't dare to say anything else, but my big brother will give you a guarantee when it comes to food, so there will be absolutely no problem. The more Qi Gang thought about it, the more likely it became. After all, the whole of East Asia knew about the recent large-scale immigration from the autonomous province. Food shortages are not impossible. Hey, that's it? Only then did Li Qing realize that Qi Gang must have misunderstood. Also, he didn't say the purpose, he only said that he was importing some moldy rice, which made people think too much. Yeah, you suddenly want to send, Chen Mi, it's really hard for us to find you. Qi Gang had already made up his mind, if Brother Li really didn't have much money, he would help even if he had to sacrifice his face, and Chen Mi would definitely not give it. We don't need to use this rice. The war is in full swing these days, and their domestic supplies are almost exhausted. I am just resting and thinking, trying to make a fortune from the national crisis in my childhood. As soon as Li Qing finished speaking, Qi Gang kept muttering in his heart, good guy, Brother Li's ideas are so wild and unconstrained, he is making other people's money and hurting other people's babies. Naiubi. What? There isn't one in my hometown, Li Qing asked with a chuckle. Just kidding, if you really live a small life, there will be zombie rice for decades. If it doesn't really exist, we can also create conditions for it to exist. Qi Gang already understood Li Qing's true intention at this time. Just kidding, there are not many opportunities like this. China is such a big country and there is so much rice like this. Ahem, we don't have this kind of rice officially, but those black-hearted, I don't know how much patriotic businessmen have a backlog. Brother Lee, don't worry, someone will contact you about this matter. The quality can be guaranteed, and we can even prepare the flavor, including Vuchang, Siamese, Nyoxiang, Japonica, we can do any flavor. Li Qing almost laughed when he heard this. When it came to anti-Japanese, his elder brother Qi was more active than anyone else. Even small things like fragrance can be thought of. Okay, thank you very much, brother Qi. Li Qing quickly smiled and thanked. Brother, why are you so polite? This thing is free, we can even add some more, I mean, I'll give it all. Li Qing's eyes widened and he was speechless. Ahem, brother Li, don't get me wrong. We just don't want to see our neighbors suffer. Qi Gang also felt that what he said was a bit excessive and coughed lightly. I understand, I understand. Brother Qi, don't worry. Also, I have a small request. Qi Gang paused and continued, this, can't be said to be imported from us. Qi Gang, who was tall and thick, was also a little nervous at this time. Brother Qi, what did you say? What does it have to do with us? It's obviously rice from Bangsa country. Brother Li, you are indeed Brother Li, your head is full of aura. The two discussed the details again, finalized the time and place of the transaction, and then hung up the phone with satisfaction. Of course, Li Qing did not agree with Qi Gang's suggestion that rice should be given away for repaying. This is a very profitable business, so you can't be too evil. All plans are slowly starting to come together. Small days in Hokkaido and Sapporo. In a less eye-catching alley in Sapporo's Kita district, some young people sneak in and out. It seems that this place has become a small black market, and the person who controls it is Sapporo's famous local gang organization Zamehe. Nothing could be seen outside, but as soon as you entered the alley you could hear people whispering. Is there any rice? I'd like some bread, is there any? Come on a pound. These people come to buy rice secretly. With the shortage of daily necessities, the rice on the market is getting more and more expensive. Not to mention bread and other foods, they have become luxuries in food. Some families can no longer afford food. Since the establishment of the big and small black markets, well-informed civilians have secretly started to buy food here. Because although this is a black market, it sells rice at a fair price, which is much cheaper than the rice sold on the market. The most exaggerated thing is that the gangs here occasionally distribute some rice balls for free to attract business, which also attracts many people. Who doesn't like free rice balls? If you eat more outside, you can save rice for your wife and children at home. Such small black markets are even spread throughout Sapporo, and the military government turns a blind eye to this situation. After all, the rice is not legitimate, but they can't interfere deliberately. They have to let the civilians survive, right? Stinky boy, just make rice balls, don't humming steal them. Zamehe's little leader Yoran scolded his younger brother. The younger brother looked at his boss with resentment. Brother, it's so fragrant, I've never eaten rice that fragrant. He didn't understand why his elder brother gave away such good rice balls for free. But let them eat that tasteless rice. Humph, this is used to attract business, I told you not to eat it, so don't eat it. Can I still let you starve? Yoran glared at the younger brother. These were all poisonous rice. To be honest, he didn't even want to smell it. Yoran's real identity is a member of the Aoki group. He secretly followed the organization to mix into the local gang. If these people hadn't followed him for a long time, he wouldn't bother to care about their lives.